Okay, it's actually pretty simple to get ahead of about 99% of people these days. You see, there's a hidden advantage that comes with how deeply our culture has become obsessed with doom scrolling, and it all comes down to understanding a few key behaviors that I haven't really seen anybody else talk about yet. If you don't know me, my name's Sean, and for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been uploading videos on places like TikTok and Instagram about how to get off your phone and begin reclaiming all of the time that you've lost to doom scrolling. In this video, I'm gonna explain to you how easy it is to actually get ahead of 99% of people today through a framework that I'm about to break down for you. And then after that, I'll tell you about the 40 to 60 rule and more importantly, how to take advantage of it. I promise this isn't just another video about, hey, get off your phone, it's bad for you. We already know how bad, our phones are. It really is about understanding this fundamental shift in our culture that presents this crazy opportunity for people like you and I and people who are willing to notice it. So there is a very specific reason why certain people in this life achieve way more than others while other people watch from the sidelines. And that reason has very little to do with talent, luck, timing, or money, and more to do with an understanding of a very specific psychological pattern that is kind of hiding in plain sight. And once you understand it, it makes getting off your phone, staying off your phone, and actually doing the things you want to do with your life that much easier. There's a huge contrast nowadays between creators and consumers, and this isn't any new or revelatory information. We've all known this. You're probably experiencing it right now. The videos you're watching online, if they're not stupid memes, come from, musicians, artists, or other creators that have a craft that they're sharing or a curiosity that they're expressing. The thing that I'm getting at that I'll explain in just a second becomes a whole lot more obvious when you think about the average time someone spends on their phone, specifically on social media. I mean, the average person spends 5 to 6 hours scrolling on their phone every day. So the answer of how to get ahead of 99% of people is to just not be average. That's it. Thanks for watching the video. See you next time. I'm just kidding. There's obviously more. So the framework that I want to introduce to you here is one that I've been calling the watchers versus the doers, and it's pretty self-explanatory. But all of this gets a whole lot more meaningful when you actually dive into the qualities of watchers and doers. And these are things that I've sort of workshopped myself and oftentimes have a much different meaning when you really think about it for yourself individually. So here are the qualities of watchers, and these are really generalized statements, but I think they sum up maybe that average person that we're talking about. Watchers watch everything and everyone all day on social media. Watchers also believe that they're unlucky or that the world just doesn't love them for some reason. Watchers resent anyone doing perceivably better than them. And lastly, watchers crave attention simply out of jealousy. They often think, everyone else is being looked at online, why aren't I? These are all passive thoughts and passive qualities that a watcher would embody as they're scrolling through the internet, and they're things that sort of make up this personality of inaction. I'll tell you right now, it's extremely easy to be average these days because of how easy it is to doom scroll. I mean, we all have experience with that. When you multiply those watcher qualities times the overwhelming amount of average people today, all of a sudden, the gates just kind of open for you. By that standard, the answer to how do you get ahead of 99% of people is you just don't be a watcher. Well, what's the other side of being a watcher? It's the doer. Doers have very similar qualities to watchers, but it all has to do with a shift in how they use their time. So the qualities of a doer are, doers don't waste 8 hours a day watching other people through a tiny pocket screen. Shocking, right? Doers develop their own values through real-world experience. Doers celebrate their peers' accomplishments both online and in real life. And lastly, doers seek attention not for the sake of validation, but to connect with other like-minded doers who share the same passion. The point here is this: watchers watch the doers, and the doers don't really watch anyone, they just keep doing. The more you think about it, the more obvious it becomes. It's much easier to be a watcher. And I shouldn't need to remind you that billion-dollar corporations have billions of dollars to spend on making their product as addicting as possible, and it works. When you sit with the mindset that a majority of the world are watchers, it becomes that much easier to become a doer. And I'll go over how exactly to become a doer, or at least my interpretation of how you might become a doer later, right after I explain the 40 to 60 rule. Once I came up with this rule, it made the hardest part of getting ahead of 99% of people, which is just starting. That is usually the hardest part of really doing anything. It made it that much easier. And to tell you the truth, I'm using the 40 to 60 rule right now, and I'll explain why in just a second. Before we dive into what it actually is, it's helpful to understand a couple things. 80% of people have no structured morning routine. 85% of adults report having a screen time of 4 hours or more. More than 90% of people in the US do not start a business in their lifetime. 99% of athletes who played in high school do not make it professionally. I don't bring up these statistics to be as non sequitur as possible. I do bring them up, however, to illustrate a wider point, and that is that the amount of people willing to take meaningful action on their lives or on themselves or on the things that they want to do is extremely low. And by proxy, the bar is extremely low. In fact, it's astronomically low. In fact, you can probably say with a lot of confidence that the bar is 40% to 60% lower than you think it is at all times. So that's why whenever you're nervous or whenever you don't really know where to start on a project, or when you want to start improving your life, but you just have a hard time understanding what to do, the best thing you can do is to just start, because that is already getting ahead of most people. So going back to this video, whenever I'm stricken with analysis paralysis or thinking that I need to have a whole Hollywood production to make a single YouTube video, I always remind myself that the bar for making good content is pretty low. The 40 to 60 rule combats perfectionism to a T, and I always find myself using it whenever I can't start something. And it's a reminder that any step in any direction is usually putting you miles ahead of those who don't do anything. All right, so we know about watchers versus doers. We know about the 40 to 60 rule, but how do we tie it all together? Well, the answer to that is simple. Just become someone who does stuff. Become a doer. And while there's no real specific ways to become a doer, there are a couple of key steps that I've noticed help expedite that process and really simplify what it means to become a doer. And I came up with these steps because I found myself skipping over a few of these. And once I figured out what it was that I was missing, everything made a whole lot more sense. So step one to becoming a doer is to recognize how low the bar actually is. Always make sure to keep the mindset that 99% of people are busy scrolling their life away. So by doing anything but that, you're already ahead of most people. Step two is to pick something to be curious about. It can literally be anything. And I think the important part of picking a curiosity is that you have to pick something that you're legitimately curious about for your own self. Step three is to learn about that curiosity. It's to follow that curiosity, dive headfirst into it, become obsessed with it, learn everything you can, be an expert. It's much easier to sit back and let your thumb do the scrolling, but the more intentional you are about learning about things that you're actually curious about, the more fun you'll have with diving into those curiosities. Step four is to express those learnings about that curiosity. And I think it can be kind of a slippery slope for a lot of people when it comes to expressing things, specifically online. The more you can actually be legitimately, emotionally invested in the curiosity that you have and let that inform how you express these things, the more holistically you fully embody what it means to be curious. And step five is to find others that share the same curiosity as you. I think we're so fortunate to have, again, the internet that allows us to not only learn about the things that we're curious about, but talk about those things with other people who are also curious about them. In my experience, doers attract other doers. And when you build a group of doers, it's hard not to continuously be doing something and really avoiding that trap of watching things all the time. And by no means is it a bad thing to be a watcher or to be a part of the majority of average people. But it is, by all means, a perfect and opportune moment for you to recognize how low the bar really is when it comes to improving your life. And not only that, but to raise that bar for yourself. I want to end with a quote here that really sort of sums all of this up. When the whole world is running towards a cliff, he who is running the opposite direction appears to have lost his mind. If there's one thing that's not going to change anytime soon, it's how long people spend scrolling through their phone. Much to my chagrin, the human species' ability to hyperfixate on dopamine, and more specifically cheap dopamine, where it comes from, will never stop being leveraged by big tech. It's in their best interest to keep you hooked for as long as possible, but the sooner you realize that, the sooner you realize how easy it is to actually just not do that, to start taking yourself from being a watcher to being a doer. And if you've made it this far in a video like this with very little editing, you're already ahead of 99% of people. You're raising your head amongst a sea of people hunched over their phone, and you're pushing back amongst the exponential rise of watchers. If you leave this video with anything, let it be this. Push back just a little bit harder every single day. Become a doer, because it's what you're supposed to do. Okay, that's all I've got for you. I'll let you get back to your day. If you have any comments, please leave them down below in the comment section, and I'll try to get back to every last one of them. YouTube thinks you'll like this video next, so you should probably just watch it. I also think you'll like it, so it's like two against one at this point, so you might as well click. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next one.